Good morning, Websummit. My name is Mikko, and I hunt hackers. That's my job. I hunt hackers, and I've been doing it for 25 years now. And during those 25 years, we've seen tons of different kinds of hackers. We've seen good hackers, hackers who hack into systems to try to improve them. We've seen bad hackers, hackers who break the law. They might break it for a motive like protesting or for a political motive or to make money. And we've also seen nation states and governments get into the hacking business. And now with the US presidential elections right behind us, there's been quite a bit of talk about what exactly went down with elections. Now, when the web came around, when the internet really became commonplace, initially politicians and the powers that be ignored it. Of course they ignored it. They didn't see the power of the net. But today they do see the power of the net, and they are trying to use the net for their own benefit. Nation states, militaries, and intelligence agencies are using the net as well. They're using it to do spying, using it to do espionage, and using it to sway people's opinions. Now, let me be clear about the US presidential elections. I don't think that the Russian government hacked the elections, but I do think they tried. And we've seen Russians do this before as well. This is from 2008. This is the website of the Parliament of Georgia. Georgia, the country, one of the ex-Soviet states. During the crisis between Russia and Georgia, there were several defacements. And this is the website of the Parliament after getting hacked. The Parliament website was defaced with images of the Georgian president, Mikhail Saakashvili, together with images of Adolf Hitler, likening the president of the nation to the worst dictator in history. And this is traditional propaganda imagery, trying to affect people's opinions about their leaders by likening them to the worst possible leaders on the planet. And this is indirect force at use. This isn't about trying to change the leaders directly, it's about trying to affect the people who vote. There's also other kinds of power that governments use. The investigative board that was investigating the tragedy of the MH17 flight, the Malaysia Airlines flight which crashed in Ukraine last year, the investigators were targeted by targeted attacks by earlier this year. They were coordinating their research by using shared Outlook web access calendars and Outlook web access email servers. And some of the members of this investigative board received emails, very convincing emails about how their account had been breached and they had to change their password. And those emails linked them to Outlook web access authorization page, but this wasn't the right page. This was an unknown government trying to gain access to the credentials of the investigators while they were investigating the crash of MH17, which then leads to the next question. Which government might be interested in investigative research into MH17? And the fact that governments are using power like this online gets even more worrying when we realize that our societies are being run by computers. Everything around us is being controlled by computers and software. The lights are on in this hall because of computers and software. The breakfast you ate this morning was at least partially manufactured in a food processing plant, which is being run by computers and software. Today, every company is a software company. Every company is a software company. regardless of what they do. A car company is a software company. A food company is a software company. A hotel is a software company because everything is being run by computers and software. And surprisingly big part of those computers are online. Many of them are online even though they are not supposed to be online. We know this because we regularly scan the internet and we find devices like power generators and power plants and dams and other pieces of critical infrastructure sitting online, clearly without reason, clearly not on purpose. So what happened 2 days ago in the United States? Well, like I said, I don't believe the vote was hacked. In fact, it would be very, very difficult to hack the vote in a country like the United States. Because the United States has a very, very distributed system for voting. Every single state, in fact, in many cases, independent counties have their own voting systems. And to hack every single one of them, or to hack a significant amount of the counting centers, would be very hard to do, if not impossible. However, someone did try to do that. We did see attempts of breaking into the counties' vote tabulation systems. This is the FBI notification about breaches into voting systems issued in August this year. And it's pretty natural that people are worried about hacking the vote because in USA, very many people vote with computers. They don't vote online. We're not talking about internet voting, but we are speaking about computer voting, voting with machines like that. And of course, these are computers, and yes, they can be hacked. In fact, some of these run, for example, Windows 2000, which is just incredible. However, if you have an old machine running an old insecure operating system, but there's no way to connect it to anything else, it's still going to be a safe system. If there is no connectivity, it can still be safe, even though the operating system wouldn't be. So the fact that there has been research into cracking security of individual voting systems still doesn't mean that this could easily be done in practice or could be done at a scale that would actually matter. Now, many countries speak about online voting today, about voting on the internet. In fact, even in USA, some people do vote over the internet. Typically, military personnel in faraway countries actually submit their votes over the internet. And I think that internet voting is a bad idea. I don't like internet voting. I'm a strong opponent of internet voting. I really love this photo. I went looking for an image, looking for a stock photo of internet voting. This was one of the stock photos I found from a stock library. That's not really what internet voting looks like, but that's the first stock photo you'll find about it. Internet voting, the idea of going online to do your votes, in almost all cases, is trying to solve a problem which doesn't exist. Yes, if you do voting on the internet, and then you can collect the votes centrally, you will be able to get the results faster. That is true. But we just saw elections in a country with 300 million people, and we got the results in a couple of hours. With internet voting, we might have gotten the results in half an hour, but is that worth the trade-off? No, it's not. The only places where internet voting might actually make sense would be, I don't know, countries like India with really over 1 billion people, where actually vote count does take several days. But in many cases, internet voting doesn't actually solve any real problem, and it exposes us to completely new kinds of risks. And I don't just mean risks of fraudulent votes or hacking the voting systems, but even practical things like when people vote from their homes, we could easily see a situation where, a husband would make sure that the wife votes correctly, because now there is no vote secrecy anymore, as you would be voting from your home. So I think internet voting is a bad idea. Then we saw other kinds of mechanisms through which people tried to affect the outcome of the vote. For example, on the days leading up to the elections, people were posting messages like this to Facebook and Twitter, encouraging people to vote for Hillary. And did you know that you can actually vote by a text message? You don't actually have to go to the booth. And this is bullshit. You actually cannot vote with a text message. But you can see how this would affect people. If they vote over a text message and they believe they've now voted, they will end up not voting at all. Now, over the last months, we've seen over and over headlines about hacked emails being leaked. Hacked emails stolen from the ClintonEmail.com email server, the infamous server run by Hillary Clinton for many years. Emails stolen from the Democratic National Committee. Emails stolen from the Democratic Congressional Campaign. And emails stolen from one of the campaign leads, Mr. John Podesta. And these emails were published through various means. One venue was dcleaks.com and the Twitter account run by these people, or as well as WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks, which has published the largest collections of these emails. Now, as these email leaks kept on accumulating, there was actually an interview done by Bloomberg TV to interview President Putin. And during this interview, he was asked the question, Mr. Putin, who hacked the Democrats? And Putin answers, is that really important? Does it really even matter who hacked it? The important thing is the content of the emails. There's no need to distract the public about who did it. There's no need to distract the public about who did it. And now, after the election results were released yesterday, one of Putin's aides gave the comment to the media about how they are happy with the results and how they were happy that they were maybe able to help indirectly together with the WikiLeaks. Now, when we look at the breaches, on how these breaches were actually done, how were these networks infiltrated, we find an old friend of ours. We find malware called CozyDuke, which was used in some of these attacks. It was not the only malware. In fact, we can trace back the attacks against these targets to Russia. In fact, we can trace them back both to GRU and SRV. That's the military intelligence of the Russian government and the civil intelligence agencies of the Russian government. And these are the kinds of attacks we've been researching into for quite a few years. In fact, there's 9 different members of the Duke family, 9 different malware families within the whole Duke operations. And the earliest examples of these hacking operations, which we can trace back to the Russian government, start from 2007. Many of the attacks we saw this year were done with targeted phishing emails, but some of them were also done with booby-trapped documents, where you would receive an email from someone you know and trust with an attached Word document or PDF file which would contain an exploit. And those emails and the documents would look very, very convincing. They would look very real. But then when you open them, they actually contain an exploit which will take over your computer, drop a backdoor on your system, and then that backdoor will connect back to the attackers, giving the attackers full access to all the data on your computer, plus all the data in the network, all the data that you can access in your network. And now we can all take a moment and think about how much data we can access in our organization's networks. In many cases, we can access quite a lot. Now, when we look at the reaction from the Duke's operation to revelations about their activities, it's very interesting to see that when we published our report last year detailing the history of this group and about how they've worked, who have they been targeting, what kind of malware have they been using, the exact hashes of the malware samples they were using, the IP addresses of the servers they were using, the encryption keys that they were using to encrypt their communications. When we published all that, we were expecting some sort of a reaction from the group. And initially, for quite a few months after we published our research, they didn't change anything at all. And that tells us that they believe that they are untouchable. They've just learned that their operation has been blown out into the public. And they carry on as if nothing would have happened. That tells us that they're not worried about getting caught. They're not worried about the police knocking on their door. Why? Because they are the government, or they are being protected by the government, because they are untouchable. And then when we look at critical infrastructure being targeted by nation states, probably the best example of this we saw last year in Ukraine. This is the headquarters of Bryggarbatto-Oblenergo, which is the largest electricity operator in Ukraine. And they were targeted with a cyber attack on the 23rd of December last year. An attack which targeted the operational workstations by the operators who were controlling the backup power generators and the relays controlling power distribution in Ukraine. And this was the hack which shut off power from over 200,000 Ukrainians in the middle of the winter. And this attack originated from Russia as well. And Russia and Ukraine are at war. So what else could we call this except an attack in cyber war? So, I've been working with malware and attacks and cybersecurity for quite a while, and I still remember the time when our enemy was teenage kids, teenage boys writing viruses for fun, teenage boys hacking into servers for fun, teenage boys doxing each other and leaking information for fun. So, hackers used to be the ones causing havoc and releasing private information. That's what it used to be. And when I look around today, what I'm seeing is nation states being the ones causing havoc, and nation states being the one releasing private information. This is 2016. Thank you very much.